Welcome to Retro Skill Modelling. This is part 16 of AMT's Star Trek Next Generation Enterprise D build. In this part, I'm going to be putting the finishing touches to the model, so applying all the vanishes and connecting it to the stand. So let's jump into this and see how well I get on. To begin with, I'm making the hole to pass the cable through or the wire through. So I'll use my knife as a pilot to create a pilot hole, then just my pin drive to create the actual hole. This is in the dead center of the part of the stand. The stand comes in two pieces. You've already seen me work on the top part of the stand in earlier videos, and I'm creating a hole for this one in the exact same way that I create all my holes. As you can see there, the little hole is drilled. So now I'm just using my knife and twisting it around inside to open up the hole to the diameter that I wish. And it's wise to check as you go along to make sure that you've got enough room for the two wires to pass through. Um, you don't want too big a hole because that could lead to bonding issues if you've done it right to the edging of the mount. And of course, if it's too small, you're not going to get both wires put through. On the stand itself, you have to look at where the wire is going to come out of. I'm planning on, as you can see, taking the wire through the one of the struts of the Star Trek emblem. So all I'm doing here is taking a triangular file and filing down a divot or a trough inside this part so the wire will lay into it. Now you may wish to fit a switch to the base. There's enough room there to do that. I'm not going to be doing it because all these enterprises that I built over the years are eventually all going to be linked into one power source and displayed in one area. So the power will be putting all the lights on. So I need quite a nice little bit of runoff of wire to enable that to do that. This is why you've never really seen me connect these up permanently to a power source. And when I eventually get that around to doing that, of course, I'll show it all anyway. So I'm happy with the depth of the little trench. So it's time to place the top part of the unit onto the base. I've already scraped off some of the paint, not all of it, but most of it, and it will bond. So it's just a matter of placing the strut coming up from the base inside its housing, and that will take a few minutes to dry. So once it's dry, I've got to marry up the position of the stand. So first of all, I have to thread through the wire. So the wire's first part is fairly easy. It goes into it and just pull it through. And then on the second part, it's a little bit more difficult, but not overly much, to wire the two wires through. As you see there, I've actually knocked off the stem, so I'm going to have to look at that. I thought it was dried at this stage, and obviously it wasn't. So that's a mistake on my part. I should have left it a little bit longer until it was more drier. But nevertheless, I'm carrying on. So I'm just pulling these wires through now. And once they're through, I can attach them to the actual model itself. Now, the part that came off, it turned out it was quite a godsend in a way, because the next part, connecting it to the model, is a little bit tricky. It's tight, but when I created the opening for the stand, I purposely made it tight because also I didn't want it to be flapping around on the stand. So when the stand broke apart, I was able to put more pressure on it just to clip it into place, and added a little bit more glue just to keep everything stable, and I'll just leave it to dry. And now it's dried, now I can move on to the next stage, and I'm just going to give it a coat of varnish before I go on. This is just so it's an extra layer of protection, and I'm using Pledge Clear here. It's also essential that I put in the gloss varnish or the clear varnish as well, before I apply other varnishes. The varnishing process for this is a little bit different from a normal model, because once this varnish is on and dried, I'll be then putting on a matte varnish before putting on the final varnish. And this is all because of the decals are a little bit thicker than your normal decals, so they need a little bit more treatment to get them bedded in. They are in now, but you can see the light bouncing off them. It's too harsh, so that all has to be toned down. So before I put the matte varnish on, I have to protect everything with the gloss varnish. So as you can see there, with the light bouncing off it, it just doesn't look like it looks too heavy. In fact, that's the word I'm looking for. It looks too heavy, but the varnish does help get that heaviness away. So now I'm putting on the actual matte varnish, and I'm using Winsor & Newton matte varnish. Now, there's another thing I should have pointed out with the placing the stand on before this process. It's actually a time saver as well. Because I've got the stand on, I can varnish the underside first, flip it over, rest it on its stand, then lightly varnish over. So it saves a hell of a lot of time. So I've got the Halfords clear lacquer out again, and this is going to be the final varnish on it. And I'm just going to be spraying it all over, and this will, as I said, that'll be the final varnish. But before I get to that, I'm just going to be extending the wires, because I need a good runoff, as I said earlier, so it will be connected to other enterprises once I eventually get around to building everything. Before I connect the wire, I'm just doing a process called tinning, and this is just putting a little bit of solder on the bare wire, ready to receive its join. Each end has this process, and it is better to do it than not do it. You can do it. You can join them without doing it, of course, then adding more solder on at the end. But it can make for a heavy join. So it's better doing just a little bit of tinning before you join the two ends together. And once that's done, I just take the two ends and twist the wire together. Try and leave 1 or 2 millimeters in between each wire, just so that you got enough room to work with, because it will need heating up again and a little bit of resolder just to make the join. And I'm just going to place it in the clamps here, keep it taut, and that way I'll know exactly how much room I've got to play with. Sometimes if it goes slack, you can over solder it and end up with a whole lumpy mess. And one of the reasons for doing this, you want a nice clean soldering join, is when you put your sheath on to shrink it, you want to make sure it goes over, or you may have to cut off it a little bit and start again. So because I extended the wires, I'm just doing the light test before I seal everything up, and everything lit up okay there, as you can see. So now it's time to embed these wires into the stand. So I've just put down a little bit of super glue, and I'm just holding the wires into the groove on the underside, as you can see there. That just keeps everything nice and tidy and in a stable location. I'll then put the sheaths on over the bare metal, of course, before shrinking them down to go over the joint. So just using my solder iron to go over the sheath, and that shrinks it down. I should have protected the model here, but my solder iron was clean. I didn't have any little bits of solder on it to drop off on to the model, luckily. Next is to overlay a sheath on both wires. Now ideally I would like this sheath to be longer, but I haven't got any of the proper length ones, so I'm just using my smaller ones I use for joining the wires. And it's just a matter of placing them on and shrinking them down to become one. The main thing, as long as you're protecting the wire. I may go back one day and put on a proper sheath and put it over it all in one go. But this will do if you haven't got anything else to hand. So I'm just shrinking down one unit at a time until it joins both wires. And this is where I'll end the video. All that's left to do is to finish off putting the sheaths onto these wires, and of course applying the last coat of varnish through the spray can, the Halfers lacquer. So the next part of the video will be the final review. So in the meantime, if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other builds? If you subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit the notification bell. That way you'll be kept up to date, not only with this build, but all my future builds as well, of course. Hit that like button. Don't be afraid to leave a comment. And of course, you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.